Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Today's episode is on a program called We Are Hope Recovery Solutions. And it is a very interesting program because it has such a wide variety of reach and purpose. But before we get into this program, we're going to talk a little bit with Martin about why he's so passionate about what he's doing with that program, and dive a little bit into his own life and his own addiction and experience and his recovery a little bit, and then we're going to tie it into why this is such a very valid program that has been created for our community. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to start off. What was it like? What was your headspace like as a kid growing up? When you felt uncomfortable in your own skin, when you started using addiction or acting out in any way that would later set the path for what you ended up going through.
What's the stage before birth?
Yeah?
Yeah, it was pretty much as far back as I can remember.
When you're in the womb.
Yeah. I was pretty much uncomfortable
Didn't get
there.
along with your mom in there?
Not enough space.
Not enough space. To stretch out?
Yeah, my mom and dad they've always been pretty cheap, but I didn't think they'd be cheap with space in there.
That
was
cute.
Supposed to be mine.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, the East Bay to be exact, so about 15 minutes shot from Oakland, 15 minutes from San Jose, and about 30 from San Francisco. And I grew up very privileged. I try to take some off it so I don't get judged, but very privileged. Grew up in a very different household than my sisters. My parents' finances had changed by the time I was about 12. And
so they're older?
They're older.
Okay.
And so there's some noticeable differences between their personality and their experiences versus mine. But as you would think that as parents who have means, you would treat your kids like, we didn't have a easy upbringing. I'm pretty sure I was one of the only kids in my high school with a job. Mm-hmm. It was important to my parents that we learned the value of hard work. Mm-hmm. And I learned the value of, you said $1, and that's what my parents' hope was that I would learn the value of $1. But what happened was I learned the value of hard work and how to work hard. I did not have any appreciation for money. And I probably could have benefited from, today they call it financial literacy. But back then it just wasn't talked about. There weren't, you couldn't go to Chime and get your kid a bank account when they're 10 years old and put their allowance in there and teach them about budgeting. So if your parents talked to you about it, you knew about it. If your parents didn't, my parents are great parents.
Were they good at saving money?
It's pretty much the only thing they did.
So they were good at saving money and building money, but they didn't teach you.
No,
or you didn't listen.
Well, I don't think I listened because if they watch this and they go, "We told you all the time," and I talk to them each probably twice a day, so I'm almost positive they're gonna say that they told me. Yeah, I'll just have to trust them on that. They're pretty trustworthy for the most part, but I didn't listen. Most of the time when I was younger, if it was a category of something that interested me, I would listen. I would pay attention. And that was true across the board for education, employment, levels of interest and categories.
That's true with everybody, though, would you say?
Well, I don't know. I'm only in this brain.
Okay, everybody in this room.
Okay, then I could say, but if it's something that I didn't think was going to apply to me, I would tune out. Yeah. Or I was never rude about it. I, for a long time, was the person that pretends like they care what you're saying, but in my head there's I'm thinking about
the eyes would be glazed over.
Yeah, and pretty quick-witted enough to be able to formulate a response should they stop halfway through and check and just hit me with a question.
Oh, you must have enjoyed relationships.
Man,
did you hear what I just said? Yes, I did. Yeah. What did I say?
It's like my brain is constantly storing the last 5 words that anybody
just in case someone needs instant recall. You're that guy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And now I'm realizing that my girlfriend's going to be watching this.
Yeah.
I'm giving
You're
away
welcome.
trade secrets here.
Nah, or helping her.
Yeah. So after high school, I worked at my mom's company. I worked at my dad's company. I did not know anything about addiction. To be clear, I was an addict of all varieties from birth, as far as I'm concerned. But my first addiction, once I did learn about it, looking back, was food.
Yeah.
Mine
too.
Man, it's like I relapse on that more than I relapse on everything.
That's much more prevalent in recovery than people like realize it, because it's not something you can measure so much. You know?
And it's hard. I mean, you need to eat.
Yeah.
You need to eat.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 18, I was 454 pounds. And I remember hearing this radio show in the Bay Area called The Doghouse. And as far as credible sources go for good medical information, they were not it. I mean, they were a morning show that would make prank phone calls and a bunch of juvenile stuff. And they were talking about this procedure called gastric bypass.
Right.
And it sounded like a magical thing that some wizard came up with, and there's going to be a catch at the end of it. And so I pitched it to my parents expecting a no, and you got to keep in mind that back then medical science did not catch up with, or excuse me, insurance companies did not catch up with medical science. So this was considered cosmetic. Even at 454 pounds, it's cosmetic, so it's a cash deal. And I don't care how much money your parents have.
Even now they'll say that you have to, that's such a risk to your life, you know, but back then they didn't know.
And well, both
my parents were each over 350 pounds.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah. And I used to say that we grew up in a big family with very few people in it.
That's pretty clever. Every time I hear a clever joke that I didn't come up with, I'm like, this much entertained, but like this much jealous. Yeah. Yeah. I have to go to another state to use it.
Nah, you can use it. I don't care.
Thank you.
Although everybody knows where you got it from. But I get that.
Yeah.
Food addiction is actually one of the first addictions for a lot of people when they get into other addictions, because like I've known, not to get off on a tangent, but like people who have gotten into like meth, a lot of times it's or any kind of speed or anything, is to to be able to function, to be able to lose weight, to be able to keep it off. Cocaine,
I would have tried it had I known. In fact, after the surgery, it was suggested to me almost by every person, well, why didn't you just do meth?
Oh, God.
Why didn't you just do cocaine?
Oh, my God.
It would have been cheaper, and they're probably right. It would have been cheaper like in the short, in the short term, but not in the long run. The irony is I wound up there anyways.
Yeah.
But so I pitched it to my parents expecting a no. My mother, who was a medical professional for many years in the Bay Area, was she was delicate with her approach, because she was receptive to it right away. I didn't know what it was, but being in the medical field, she knew a lot about it, and it didn't sound crazy to her. My father was reserved, which is surprising for him, because he, like me, likes to make like big statements, and my mom handled that really well. If it wasn't for her, it probably wouldn't have happened, and she kind of steered my dad toward looking into it.
They probably had a lot of conversations before that about being concerned. Were they big people too? Yeah,
but not like me. Not like me. And my mom, she has been at her target weight for, God, I want to say a decade. She did Weight Watchers. I remember being a little kid, and
my mom did that too.
Yeah, I was like 8 years old, 7 years old, already getting big, and I would go to Weight Watchers with my mom.
Yeah.
And like we're both clients. And Jenny Craig.
Yep. I remember Jenny Craig.
Man, we tried.
I think it's still around.
I believe it is. I know they still make.
But I went to these things like, I'm a lot older than you, so I went to them like a long time ago.
We can just leave it at that.
Nutrisystem.
Yeah, Nutrisystem. They tried that. I tried every kind of fad diet. Living in the Bay Area, there's never any shortage.
Right.
It was the kale. There was the kale phase.
The
and
grapefruit diet.
Oh my God, the Atkins. Now the Atkins was definitely too good to be true.
Yeah.
I mean, unlimited bacon, unlimited cheese, unlimited pretty much everything that you're steering away from.
And that kind of steered into keto. Where people got more into keto, less protein, more fat.
Yeah, people, after he died, people took the Atkins diet, and you had things like keto, the zone. The zone diet was pretty popular for a while.
Yeah, so it's obvious that, you had tried lots of things, and they probably had lots of conversations about, being concerned about you being only 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the surgery?
I had the surgery, and to the qualifications to get the surgery back then, there were not a lot of people having the surgery, were very minimal, because they didn't want to disqualify you or scare you away, because most people were cash patients.
But it is dangerous to do surgery on somebody overweight.
Yeah, anytime someone that size goes under the knife under anesthesia, there's a high risk. Now, the year I had it done, more people died having their wisdom teeth pulled than under that procedure, but that is one procedure.
Right.
And it was the most expensive procedure. It's the most invasive on the body, and it's got the longest recovery, but it's got the highest success rate. Like, I'm 20 years post-op, and I'm still at my target rate. To be specific, it's the root and why gastric bypass. And since then, there's been the lap band, the sleeve, the balloon. There's a lot of variations that you can get done on a Friday and still go to work Monday. I remember an experience about 4 months after the surgery. I walked into a McDonald's and I ordered a number one, which everybody knows is the Big Mac meal. And back then you could still supersize before that documentary came out. And I had the nerve to get a Diet Coke because I've always liked Diet Coke. And I sat down and I remember eating one fry and I was overly full. One French fry. I felt like I had eaten too much, and I looked down at my tray and I'm like, why did I order all this food? And I talked to a friend of mine whose mom was a psychologist, so he had the answer to everything in life. And he said, because you've got 18 years of behavior one way, it doesn't go away overnight. And this information became very clear later when I got into actual recovery. It's something.
It made more sense then.
It made much more sense.
Okay, so you lost weight during this, and so what happened? Why did you end up being where you got into other behaviors? I mean, we don't deal with the cause and condition. You can switch into another addiction, like switching seats on the Titanic. Was that something more so what you feel? That's
an excellent metaphor for it. I found out later what I was learning during that process is called cross addiction.
Yeah.
So remember how I said it's like there's a catch with the wizard magical surgery? Well, there was a catch. It revealed that I wasn't just a food addict, I was an addict to everything. I mean, if it's Diet Coke, I will drink it alcoholically. You know what I mean? And I do.
Yeah.
And I should probably fix that. This is accountability right here.
Well, I'm helping you because you asked me for a Diet Coke and I didn't have it.
You did. You brought me a Waterloo. Sponsor the show. And so within 6 months, I was in a substance abuse rehab in Berkeley. So
and what substance?
Alcohol. Alcohol was my first.
Were you drinking before?
Never had a sip.
Wow. So you just needed to change the way you felt. There has to be something.
The way it was described to me back then is still pretty. I like the description still today. I could no longer fill the void that I had going on emotionally and mentally with food, and I was accustomed to filling it with food. And because it was now medically restricted, I had to find something else to fill it with. At the same time I was losing the weight, my social calendar started...
And you really can only have liquid a lot of your meal.
Yes.
So alcohol is like, hey.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Wow.
It didn't take long. So about 3 months after I started getting invited to parties. All my friends had been going to high school parties. Like, this is like the end of senior year, and it's just now happening for me. And I got like 18 months of 18 years of personality that's like coming out of me, and I'm all of a sudden a different person. And it wasn't a different person bad.
Right. Just you were repressed.
Yeah.
You were repressed.
Exactly.
And you finally, that's what happened when I became a stripper. Like, I had been like this massive introvert and like scared of like people not thinking I'm cute and stuff, and then I became a stripper and it was like a whole new world.
Right. You went from one spectrum totally opposite
because
end
I
of the
had
other.
a space and permission to experience myself.
Yeah. I think other people, because alcohol was at play, experienced me more than I experienced me. My
this
mom,
is common. I mean, when it comes to why the number one reason why people drink alcohol is because they want to shut down their inhibitions and their shame and their negative self-talk so that they can hear the music, so that they can join the party, so that they can feel like they're part of.
100%. I was, I can see it right now like it was yesterday. I was invited to my first party ever, which was a social environment that I wanted to be a part of because I had been excluded for so long, but didn't know how to do. I'm like, well, what do you do at a party? And they were like, what do you mean?
You drink.
Yeah, you drink, you hang out, you kick back. It's not a party, it's a kickback. I'm like, oh, there's different divisions of partying, And so I went, I walked in, it was a bunch of high school kids crammed into
Do you feel that your weight loss gave you also confidence to like take your new body out for a spin, so to speak?
Half of it. So the weight loss made me feel more confident, and I started to find my voice. But
the alcohol took care of the rest.
Well, if it was summertime, confidence wasn't going to do anything for me.
Right.
When you lose 400 pounds,
skin
sags, and my shirt's still staying on.
Right.
So I would eventually, my dad likes to call it the bank of mom and dad. I went back to the bank of mom and dad few years later for the bilateral skin reductions and the tummy tuck and all that, and
good for you.
I paid for the anesthesiologist. I chipped in, but even that didn't take it the rest of the way. I learned a lot about confidence probably in 2020. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit in the story here, but
we'll forgive it. Go ahead.
Okay. But confidence, then I went into an incarceration for 2.5 years into a Nevada prison. And when you're put in an environment,
you are going way too far ahead.
Well, you wait.
Okay, I was gonna forgive it, but okay, get to your point.
Okay. No, well, I'll pause it. We'll go back.
Let's talk about what got you into prison. Let's talk about like your addiction.
Well, okay.
Reel it back.
So we'll go back to the party when I had my first drink. And I didn't know that there was a saying, one is too many, thousand's never enough before. But I remember like someone handing me a shot. And I was looking at other people, and their shots were empty. And they looked smooth. They looked like they were having a great time. And I remember very specifically having the thought, man, if one makes them feel like that, then two will probably make me feel really good. And it's still in my hand.
Yeah.
So I had one, and only one, and I blacked out because for a gastric bypass patient, that hits you like 6 or 8.
Absolutely.
But right away I was a blackout drinker. That was month 3, post-operative. I knew nothing about drugs. I was a dare kid. There's pictures to prove it. As far as I knew, this was normal behavior. I never asked anybody if alcohol had that effect on them. I didn't know that was abnormal. And by month 6 post-op, I was in a rehab for alcohol. When I came out...
Fast track.
Very fast. Mom was on it quick. And so I went to a 28-day program. It cost gobs of money. And it was a nice vacation. I remember learning the basics about what goes on in my brain, neurotransmitters, serotonin. None of that stuff helps me stay sober today.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it helps somebody.
Yeah.
I was 18, I had no comprehension that any of it was abnormal, and I thought everyone was overreacting. But over the course of the next 15 or 16 years, I would have behaviors littered all across my life, whether it was in my eventual marriage, in the way I conducted myself at my jobs, which there were many, and they never lasted longer than 90 days, 120 days. I'd way oversell myself in the interview. And about month 2.5, I get the feeling they're starting to notice that I kind of oversold myself.
Yeah.
And I would resign more often than not before they had the chance to ask me to leave. Sometimes they beat me to the punch. I was always engaging in behavior that I did not learn growing up. Television, movies, I was the kid that rooted for the bad guy. And I thought, Tony Montana was cool. And I thought I could replicate behaviors as successfully, not paying attention to that most of them die in the end. Or go to prison.
Or both. Yeah.
And this was like romanticizing,
Yes.
trying to cut corners.
Justifying.
So many behaviors are considered character defects, shortcomings, alcoholic behaviors, for lack of a better phrase. Just being laziness was a huge one of them. The work ethic I had a shelf life.
Yeah.
So I'll come in.
Well, you say if you lose interest, you lose interest.
That's it. I'll come in. I'm super grateful to have employment. This is great. I'm going to grow at this company. I can't tell you how many times my friends, family.
And you believe it too.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
What's your sign?
I'm a Pisces.
You're a Pisces.
Yeah, and I looked this up once. It's like, it just basically says your head's in the clouds. You're a dreamer.
Yeah.
And every now and then I will get one on the hook that lands. But once I'm on board with something, I drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
But while I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, I'm also putting merchandise in my pocket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I need, and nothing is ever enough. And very quickly I become complacent, whether it's complacency in my car, my job, my house, my relationship, my anything. Even if it was my idea that came up with the item of topic, I will get complacent with it. I'll probably try and find somebody else's contribution to blame for it, but it's just what I do. It's classically the guy who's grateful for his job.
Great starters.
Great start. Oh, love that phrase.
Yeah.
I just love that
phrase.
Well,
it's interesting because, I'm not a Pisces, but I do love starting stuff. I love that. And then I've had to really work on, especially in the past, I don't know how many months, but realizing that I'm overcommitted and spread too thin because there's a lot of starts, And so I was thinking, as a kid, I was never told to clean up my toys before I played with another thing. I actually wasn't even really raised by anybody. It was all by myself in my room. But I digress. But my intuition was, had you had that training, that experience of don't start something new until you finish the thing you have, I probably wouldn't be where, okay, you know what, can't do this. So I started training myself. I started parenting myself and saying, okay, I know you want to start this thing, Lisa, but you need to finish this. And lo and behold, a 50-something-year-old can be trained.
Yes.
And it's okay, here we are. Yes. So I get it. I get the starts and the starts and the starts. I get that.
And you know what? To their credit, my parents.
Because they're going to be watching.
Look, I know. I am critiquing. My mom's probably got a notepad out. And to their credit, there's no handbook for parenting. No. But they covered a lot of good stuff, my parents. Yeah. They've been together since 6th grade, and they're in their 70s now.
Sweet.
Yeah. And they were very good parents. I had the ideal childhood, good balance of income with good moral compasses, both of them. the behaviors I learned, some of them I just assume I was born with.
You just came out of the womb restless, irritable, and discontent.
100%. There you go. You must have heard that somewhere.
Mom, does he cry a lot? Is he colicky?
She cries all the time now.
Well, hopefully happy.
Happy tears. Very happy.
The meeting space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.
So you're a starting lot, you're stopping, you're only lasting a short period of time, you're switching things, switching interests, and you're into other, you're drinking, you're in and out of like a rehab.
By now I'm totally, at this point, I'm probably 25, 24 years old, and I'm totally used to job hopping. My wife at the time was totally used to me job hopping. My family, they're picking up on shady behaviors way before I am, and I'm inundated in the party scene. And now I'm inundated in the party scenes like in multiple cities. I've got my San Francisco group, my San Jose group.
Still just drinking, or are you now partying?
This is where it graduates.
Okay.
So this is where I went and I really put my foot in the water very slowly. Weed, I tried smoking once, and I didn't like the feeling. I love the smell of it. That's actually that's what actually attracted me to it. But I didn't like the feeling of it, and decided it wasn't for me. But most of the time, the guy who had the weed at the party had this other thing. I had seen Scarface. I knew it as cocaine, and other than the cost, there wasn't anything back then that I didn't love about it. And I also loved...
The other thing being? The other thing, what was the other thing?
The other thing being...
The other thing...
Other than the cost.
That's more expensive.
Oh, that's cocaine.
Cocaine,
Sorry. And so... and I love that it gave me, and again, I didn't think about it like this then, but what was appealing to me is it gave me the illusion that I was chasing. It was the weekend party drug, and... I could feasibly say I was going to do it on Friday night, Saturday night, crash and eat on Sunday, and go to work Monday. I'm the king of calling in sick my first day at a new job, because I always thought, they would buy that, because who would call in sick their first day at a new job? And so I would do it before starting a new job, but the only problem is I couldn't stop. So I wouldn't crash Sunday, and I wouldn't crash Monday. I would go as long as I could afford to go. I was at this point stealing from my mom and dad. Actually that probably preceded it, but this is where, if I wasn't doing it already, I started and it took off.
Okay.
I had no idea about other drugs. Ecstasy was the only one I had heard of. I didn't know what it looked like. I had obviously heard of heroin, but I didn't know what it looked like. And I had heard it was a downer, and I knew from weed that I didn't like to go down. I like to go up.
Right.
And
I like to go down.
Yeah. and if I can't go up, then we can discuss going down. But first, let me explore all my options.
But alcohol was down.
Alcohol was down, but I didn't know that there was a down and up. Like when
But alcohol with cocaine.
Yeah, I was famous for saying once I was making like real attempts at recovery that I would never waste a relapse on alcohol. To this day.
Interesting thing to say.
Yeah, famous last words probably, but to this day, I feel totally comfortable around it because for me.
Because you've told yourself, that's it. I would never waste a relapse on alcohol.
I wouldn't. Like for me.
So when you have relapsed, it was for drugs, meth, cocaine, something.
Yeah.
So so cocaine for a while.
Cocaine for a while, and it would stay cocaine, and then pills started to become into the picture. And there wasn't a pill I didn't try to abuse. I went to my first, I forget what they called it, but it was basically a bunch of kids took all the prescriptions from their medicine cabinets and anybody's medicine cabinet they had access to. They threw it in a fishbowl, and you just grab a handful of pills.
Okay.
And today, I can't believe that I used to do that.
Of course, yeah.
So prescription pills became a thing. So now now I've escalated to like my mom's like running a hospital and I'm in her ER trying to get, Vicodin and Norcos. And when the jig was up on those, I'm across the street at the medical offices attached to them trying to get tramadol. And like, I just wanted to change the way I felt. And I still didn't understand, even though I was being told you just want to change the way you feel. I didn't believe that. I thought I was still young enough to be able to, this could be a regular thing. But very shortly after that, around 30, I'm starting to notice that, like, although I've done some very adult things, marriage, kids, buying a house, my life and my decision making was very juvenile. And most of my friends.
They do say that when you start using that you stop developing.
Yes.
It's true.
I'm waiting for the time when it's going to pick back up again.
Yeah. When am I going to grow up?
Right.
So what happened then? What happened then with your behavior that ended up you ending up in prison?
Okay, so I had done like the overnight DUI thing in the Bay Area. When I moved from the Bay Area to Las Vegas, there was a lot of things at work. I had switched careers. I now found myself in stand-up comedy, and now as a result of that, my marriage was falling apart because now we're on different schedules, and I wanted to buy cocaine. And in fact, I tried to buy cocaine in Las Vegas. And like, as a local now, it would be absurd to go there to do this, but I went to the Strip to try to buy cocaine. And when I got home, it was sugar and toothpaste. And I thought about calling someone and having them mail it. And I was like, no, I don't want to wait 2 days. And so I defaulted back. I went against my own words and I go, I can't get any drugs out here in a city supposedly filled with them. And I started drinking for a little while. And on the drinking scene, I met someone that said, hey man, the cocaine out here is not like where you come from. And they said, this is a dope town. And I had no idea what that meant. My parents still call marijuana dope. Obviously they were talking about crystal meth. And I was introduced to that, and that was the beginning of the end of a very long chapter of my life that was just riddled with addiction.
Yeah, that's definitely the fast track.
Yeah, and I had obviously heard about it. I had never seen it, never done it, and from the moment I did it, it was that arrived. I never questioned. I was never one of those people like, when's it gonna wear off? Because I have to be somewhere. You know, it was. I never wanted it to stop, and so I didn't. And my kids went to the wayside. My wife went to the wayside. My career, which was booming at the time, went to the wayside.
Career as a stand-up comic.
I got into trouble legally in every possible way. I'm burglarizing houses in the middle of in broad daylight. I'm stealing everything from anybody I don't know, and especially if I do know you, because you're crazy enough to let me in the door, or you don't know that I've started doing this yet. My own wife didn't even know that for the first 9 months I was using meth. We would sleep in the same bed. And so, but pretty soon meth did what it does, and it started to wear me down physically. It started to wear down an already broken moral compass, and now I was willing to do absurd things. So enter now on and off chronic homelessness, and doing what it takes to survive out there. And you know, you hear all kinds of justifications. I only steal from companies that have insurance. It's people will. I've learned that nobody likes doing, or very rarely I'll say, did I meet someone that I truly believe they like doing what it takes to survive out there. And but you tell yourself things to make yourself more comfortable with the fact that this is how you live. I had no idea that there were solutions and services available to me. And even if I did, to be honest, if I'm being totally honest,
Your head wasn't there.
I was so gripped by it that I wouldn't have had any interest in it. Meth was the best thing ever, and I didn't understand why everybody wasn't doing it. So we can fast forward to the already divorced life of 2020. I remember the exact date because it was my birthday. And everyone else will know the exact date because it was the day of the shutdown for COVID. And at that time, I had been stealing from stores. They call it.
So COVID shutdown was on your birthday?
March 19th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I got quite a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift. It didn't feel like one.
Yeah. But had you already been to prison?
No.
Okay.
This is how I get there.
Oh, wow.
I was boosting or stealing out of stores and selling it to support my habit. And the shutdown happened, which meant all the stores closed. And I couldn't do that anymore. And so I had to step outside my comfortable, already pitiful attempt at my criminal element into an area that I hadn't done, which was, I, in my head, graduated to robbery. And it turns out it takes a much more assertive individual to commit that crime.
How do you rob houses, right?
No,
because you can't rob houses, everybody's quarantined.
Well, you burglarize houses. Robbery is you take something by force from a person.
Oh.
And, stealing is a very quiet, cowardly, passive crime. They don't know it's happening most of the time. Robbery is, has often the threat of violence, and you try to control the situation with fear and a dominating presence. And, I'm not a big guy. And, growing
anymore.
Up... Right. Thank you. I see what you did there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And growing up in the Bay Area, it's hard to find someone who's big on guns. That was a culture shock coming to Nevada. So I wasn't about to get my hands on a gun because I'd probably be the guy who shot himself accidentally.
Yeah.
And I attempted 3 robberies from 3 different businesses in the same day. That still had their doors open. One was a gas station, one was a fast food chain, and the last was a motel. And I had failure lost money on the second one, and then the third one, a guy twice my age and half my size, gave me the beating of a lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah, and he said, I'm going to keep your knife. And to be clear, my knife was one of those little Swiss Army blades. And I think I accidentally actually pulled out the nail filer, I'm pretty sure, by accident, not the knife.
Geez.
But he kept it, and then he said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes before I call the police. And I didn't have anything left in me. I didn't run. He said, go ahead and go. And I just walked outside the motel, and I sat down and I waited.
Interesting.
And I remember probably 15 years prior to that, I had a friend, he said, some people got to die so others can recover. And some people got to go to institutions and get hospitalized so others can recover. And some people need to go to prison.
In essence, you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I knew that I had been trying long enough on the outside to stop. At this point, I'm now wanting to be stopped, and I'm really struggling with the concept of like, okay, well, I'm actually trying to do this, and it's not happening. Like, I'm in control of my body,
right,
and it's not happening, and I couldn't understand that. And I had remembered that he had said that. And that kind of went through my head about the same moment as my son. I have 3 kids, but for some reason, Cameron just shot through my brain right at that moment, because God probably knew it would help. And I sat down and I surrendered. And so prison was, again, like when
So how much time did you get in prison? I mean, you couldn't have been that long if you didn't really accomplish.
Well,
or you confessed everything?
Okay. That's the same smile people gave me when I arrived in prison, and they said, "You did what?"
No, I'm just asking if you did. I found this fascinating.
I totally did. So, I was not
how interesting.
Not informed on how you're supposed to treat the criminal justice system as an inmate, and
that everything you say can be used against you.
Yeah. So
and
one, the old man concussed me up real good. So I'm not thinking good already, and even on a day with a clear head, I still don't think good a lot of the times. And they came in the room and they said, "Look, man, you must be a really intelligent, talented guy. COVID shut down. I don't know if you know what's going on out there, but 4 people in the entire city of Las Vegas got arrested tonight, and you're one of them." And CCDC had never looked so empty. It was like it was getting ready for an implosion. You think the Strip empty looks eerie.
Yeah.
The inside of that building empty was eerie. And they said, so tell us about what you did. And so I told them, like, everything, because I thought it would help me. And in a non-COVID environment, this would have backfired. Tremendously. But I was like Chunk in the Goonies. They're like, start at the beginning, and I'm like, in 5th grade. And I just start spilling it. And the next morning, my lawyer comes to me and says, "You are lucky. This is a COVID environment. The court is anticipating being backlogged tremendously, feasibly for the next 12 months. And, God, they were right looking back. And she said, so we are handing out what's called global deal offers. And I had no idea what that was. And it was basically like, your name has come up in other investigations that were also pitiful.
Okay.
Petty theft stuff, from the same businesses over and over.
Do you feel like that was true?
Oh, I know it was true. Because after we did the you show me yours, then they showed me theirs. It was
and
for
they
sure.
Had stuff to show.
I couldn't believe they had a file on me. I was, there's cameras everywhere in this town.
Yeah, for sure.
And whether you feel like you're getting away with something is just for how long before there's that knock at the door.
So they made a deal with you.
Yeah, they said, tell us everything you've done to the best of your memory, and so long as it's not a capital crime, we will bundle it all together in 2 to 5 year sentence.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and even then, like, knowing that I had to go to prison in that beautiful surrender moment, at this point I'm like, 2 to 5 is a little long. How about 1 to 5? And they're like, no. So, it was my first and only time. And again, much like the party scene, I knew nothing about it. I knew that it was in an environment that I'd be almost insured to be sober, so I thought.
All right.
No. And only the people who have means in there can really afford to get high. And
because you could do stuff.
Yeah. Right. And I didn't have to engage in that because, again, I would lie to mom and dad for a little portion, but somewhere to purchase it, But when I arrived, I was terrified. Several people gave me the do's and don'ts. I followed those pretty close. COVID prison, it was almost like God made that time the designated time for me to go, because it was the perfect prison environment for me. I got to go to prison and understand where things could lead, but I didn't have to get like full prison mode. By the time it loosened up, I got sent to what they call a camp. It's like a fire camp where you do if there's a fire that happens in one of the nearby forests, I guess.
Okay.
I would there's no nearby, but so I never went. But I wound up being maxed out on my sentence. I actually got I denied my first parole and granted my second, but it was about a month of parole post incarceration, like out of custody, and most of the time people have longer. They call them a tail. But at no point during my incarceration, and this wasn't a COVID thing, I thought it was, were there classes offered, spiritual counseling offered. There wasn't any preparation or reentry courses offered. And I had no idea, other than what people would tell me what I'm going to be dealing with. Other inmates were telling me what I'm going to be dealing with when I get out. But even them telling you, because they're telling you in passing or maybe while you're working out, you're not entirely paying attention and grasping the picture they're trying to paint for you. And they only know about it and are inside to tell me about it because they went out and did something and came back. So how credible are they? Picking the people I associated with in there was vital. And when I came out, I failed immediately. I had no idea how many people were in charge of your life. You have a house manager, you have a parole officer, there's another officer at the time at PMP that was an intake officer. I had a boss. Still had my mom, because they're always in charge. She's always in charge.
Your mom is on the high.
Right. And it was overwhelming with no preparation. And did not know where to go. All I knew, my recent behaviors in this town were all negative.
So I know, like, over time with like rehabs, that a lot more has gotten integrated, where there's a lot that's now, people going to meetings and other recovery groups through rehab, being introduced to all the different options that are out there, going from inpatient to outpatient, really, and it used to not be that way, but having this like transition and more education and more hand-holding, and then, exposing people to the world and saying these are the things that you need to plug into and do, and while you're still in therapy, but in jail, it's like, okay, your sentence is done. And while there are people bringing different programs into jails more and more now, there's still not a program or enough in the jails, working with the jails. And so is that...
that's exactly why I love what I do now. One of the things, a byproduct of COVID, was telehealth. And one of the reasons that Department of Corrections, nationally, and local jails nationally love to fall back on is we can't do that today, we can't do that this day, because it's a risk to safety and security.
For people to come in physically.
Yes.
But for telehealth.
Yes.
How interesting is that?
Yeah, so the risk to safety and security trumps everything.
Uh-huh.
It will even trump meal times in institutions
For
like
sure.
that. And no one can question it.
Right.
Well, everybody wants what most people want the guards to, and the nursing staff and everyone to go and come home.
Mm-hmm.
They have families too.
Mm-hmm.
And who can say anything about that? And then there were a few good things. There's probably going to be some backlash for that, but there were several good things that resulted in COVID. Telehealth was definitely one of them. Mental health, just the platform it was given.
Right.
That in itself.
Because it made therapy much more readily available to anyone.
Yeah, it gave behavioral health a stage.
But more and more people through COVID needed therapy, or was it where people stopped running and gunning and they started realizing, and then addiction was like in a serious uptick during COVID.
And it's not behavioral health and substance abuse is not a stranger to the front and center stage nationally, but its time there is always very limited. After a school shooting or after a prominent person's overdose, it's a topic for a very brief window of time, and then it goes away. And during COVID, it's like people wouldn't let it go away because everybody was dealing with it. Now,
so the company that you guys are all part of that you guys are doing this program that you have. So this is riding the vehicle of using telehealth to be able to.
It's one of the avenues you're talking about.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's taking the momentum.
It's brilliant because.
Thank you.
It's brilliant because a phone call is always much more allowed than necessarily visitation or people bringing meetings in or groups in. It's a whole bunch of, and like you said, anything could be going, a security risk, anything can be happening, and they'll shut it down and people can't bring anything physically there. But if you can integrate telehealth into it and have therapists that are licensed and very focused, you can bring outpatient modalities to them and work with prisons.
Yes, and it did not start out that way. The telehealth idea, when I started doing outreach director at We Are Hope Recovery Solutions, it was new to me. I had a lot of failures in this town, and I had failures coming out of incarceration. And I had failures going in every category, economically, socially, legally, and I kind of just in my head started reverse engineering and going back through my path and going, God, it was hard here, it was hard at this, it was hard there, and
could it have been easier?
It's I know now that it could have, and other people will be afforded that based on what we're doing.
That's great.
I remember the moment I was on the couch downstairs with my girlfriend. She's a substance abuse counselor, Allison Ascani, also at We Are Hope Recovery Solutions. Yeah, and we were just kind of talking about it. And this thing, the program that you're referring to is the program at CCDC, the program within the Nevada Department of Corrections. We stumbled upon it by accident at first. I was accident. No accident. Very good. Yeah, accident as far as I knew, and as far as human conception, and. I very quickly realized that as I was talking to people about it and pieces of it were coming together, that God certainly never wanted me to fail. It wasn't His will for me to do the things I did. But man, is He good when you want to do the right thing and live right. Man, is He good at helping you clean up your mess and making sense of a situation that humans can't make sense of. Only He could put, in my opinion, put the dots together like that.
And He knows what it's going to take for the mind to be ready
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
It's been a perfect...
And so it seems to happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
We later find out was really happening for us.
Yes.
Because had we had unlimited license to just do whatever it is that we thought we wanted to or needed to do at the time, we would have never experienced what we ended up experiencing in our recovery.
Yeah, and so we came up with this concept that addressed truly, because there's lots of diversion programs in institutions nationally, locally and nationally. Drug court is a famous one. And you hear the craziest estimates, 80%, 85%, 95% failure. And, you know, because I had heard it from other inmates or other homeless people, looking at a failure rate like that, I would look more at the individual at that time, being very closed-minded. But reflecting on it and being sober and having a little bit of a time and a level mind, semi-level mind on my shoulders, we kind of were able to, through reverse engineering, come up with, wouldn't it be great if it looked like this? You know, and I know nothing as far as the clinical aspect in regards to what she knows. And she doesn't know anything in regard to the experience portion of it like I know. And so you had this great synergy of both worlds and the solution to both worlds that happened, and we started to put it down on paper. And it truly, for the first time, you know, we have people in the Las Vegas justice system as far high up as elected congressmen, senators. It's across the lieutenant governor's desk. I'm told it's got tremendous support, because if you look at, like, you put it, let's say, put it next to drug court, for example. You look at the requirements of that and the restrictions that that really puts on your life. And then you lay this down, which offers an actual substance abuse courses from a substance abuse counselor credentialed, a actual LCSW or an LMFT, a credentialed therapist to address your mental health or behavioral health concerns, any medications that are required to go with that based on the diagnosis. And if you're a person of both verticals, monitoring that, having the understanding and foresight to monitor that very closely, prescriptions given in almost 48-hour increments, and the appointments set up accordingly. I mean, there's not a part of it that, we've looked for a hiccup and I can't find one. It's just, that's how I know it really didn't come from my brain.
Right.
It just, he used my brain.
Yeah.
But, and it truly addresses not only the need for that in the institution on a realistic level where you're actually getting something, but it also brings you through your post-incarceration and that transition.
Which is so important.
Yeah, and classically, if that's offered anywhere nationally, because it's not offered everywhere, there's a transfer between departments and organizations, and you're talking about a group of individuals that inherently do not trust anything and anyone, and now you're telling them to trust a therapist on the inside, trust a new officer that is now, this officer is your friend.
Right.
And while that may be true, they don't know that and they don't believe that.
Right.
And then you need to trust a new therapist on the outside, and then maybe they leave that company and you get transferred to another therapist, and it's, people get lost in that shuffle. If people could, if an inmate could keep up, if they had their lives together well enough to keep up with the requirements of a program like that, they wouldn't be in that situation to begin with.
Right.
I
love that.
You have to meet them at their level.
I love that.
And it's not individualized, you know, it's one program for everybody, and it's the same. This is...
It's like school. It's like school. Like, you're in the school, you're in the curriculum, you're on the track. They could see one step, they're guided, this is the next step, this is the next step, this is the next step, without a gap.
Yeah, and...
Because it's the gaps. It's the gaps. And we all, whether you're in recovery or you're in prison or you're anywhere, like, we need to have a psychic change. There has to be something where more of our consciousness and our energy is invested in doing their next right thing and wanting to, like, level up and have a different life than going and resting on our default system, our programming, which is going to keep looping us back to do the same thing. Because, just like with addiction, if somebody says, you know what, this was so bad, I'm never going to drink, I'm never going to do drugs again, and then they find themselves banging on the bar going, I don't understand how I ended up here.
Many times.
Many people will become even institutionalized and are only knowing how to live in a certain way, and then you let them out and they have no clue, and everything in them is calling for whatever they do know on how to live. The programming of their survival mode and the character defects, as you mentioned, for how to live.
And the having an outside firm like ours, for example, be the ones who are running the program
and holding their hand
entirely. Yeah, that's a very good example.
Holding their hand all the way through
all
the process.
way through is crucial, because working in the institution, maybe you, over time, your experiences, not everybody, but some people might get a little jaded or project some of the things they've experienced as an employee in that institution. And to be fair, humans are individuals, and it requires a specialized person with a specialized training and credentialing to do that. It's not something maybe a correctional officer or a police officer should or really could do on an equal level to a professional clinician.
Do they have, the people in prison, do they have then theoretically the same, a same person going through and like a manager, a case manager, or anything like that?
So, are you talking about like as the...
Your program.
Oh yeah, so you're given a substance abuse counselor, and you're given a case manager, and those two people will be with you for the entire time, from point of first
Generally
contact
speaking,
all the way through into
that's great,
all the way through
because
to
it's
the end
that
of your
consistency that breeds a comfortability that allows for somebody to like relax, like just like even when people call the meeting space and they want to know about the programs and the meetings and stuff that we have there, we walk them through the whole process. We tell them where we are. We say you can come in anytime in the Recovery Star and we'll answer any questions. We introduce ourselves to them. They know what to expect. They can come ask questions, and there's already this like kind of comfortability of consistency and reasonable expectation. So you're creating this thing where you're going into meeting them where they're at and giving them what they need, that should they want sincerely to do something different in their life, and it probably will help them. And
because they engage in our program, I'm sorry, what?
It'll probably also help them when it comes to parole or even applying for parole.
So if it's the jails, we're built in as a condition of the probation. If it's the NDOC, we're built in as a condition of the parole, and you can't use it to get out and then drop the program, because we're tied to as an addendum.
Like as long as you're doing well in this.
Yes.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
So and deviation from it, like now that I use it to get out, I'm going over here, I'm just going to do whatever I want, is viewed as a violation.
Right.
So it can't really be abused in that sense, but like.
That's great that you have checks and balances with that.
They took a lot of creativity, and none of that vision could happen without our CEO, Virginia Kendred, and the COO, Yamina Jones. They've been in this field, in this town for a long time, and on my first day, they said, go do what you're going to do. And I had no idea where that was going to take me, but they didn't put me in a box. And
they're listening to their intuition too.
And that must be real, to their credit, that must be tremendously hard, because they are two women that have incredible vision, and they're good at applying that vision. So
but they talked to you, and they got where your head was at and what you wanted and what you saw, and something inside them said yes. I love this. So this is the end of our show. Is there where can people find out more about this? What's the website called?
The website is wearehopelv.com.
Okay.
And we are located in the Las Vegas Medical District.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to seeing what happens from all this and how much you grow. And I personally want to participate and help in whatever way that I can. I feel intuitively like our paths are in a very interesting, intuitive overlap in some of the things that we're both
In many ways.
focused on.
Yeah.
And I love that. Tay and I both feel very strongly about wanting to help in any way to change the rules, the laws, and the stigma
Mm-hmm.
of addiction, mental illness, codependency, PTSD, everything.
The whole umbrella.
So thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you
on
for
the
having
Red
me.
Recovery Show, and
Thank
thank you for joining us. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who give them, and are not meant to replace your own intuition or any professional medical advice, and don't represent any 12-step program. Did I say that right? I don't know. Anyway,
I think so.
it doesn't. So if you want to be on a future episode, or you're curious about the show or the meeting space or the recovery store, hit the meetingspace.com and click on the contact form and reach out to us. All right? Well, we'll see you next time.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.